Hi boys and girls! Today's learning target is I can clearly explain my reasoning when doing a which one doesn't belong activity. So which one doesn't belong is an activity where you're going to get 4 things, 4 pictures, 4 numbers, 4 shapes, whatever, and one of those things, in your opinion, does not belong with the others. And using your reasoning and your persuasion, you are going to explain why the one that you have chosen does not belong in that group. But here's the kicker. They're all right answers. Because someone could look at this set of 4 and explain a good reason why each one of those 4 things don't belong. So there's no wrong answers in this activity. This is all just about explaining your thinking. You can even challenge yourself after you've explained which one you think doesn't belong, like which one you saw first. You could think, okay, well, what would someone else say about this other one? Why wouldn't it belong? And you can do that with each of the 4 options. This will make a little more sense when you see an example. I'll work through a couple examples with you in this video. And then our assignment today will have some different pictures for you to explain your thinking about. Let's get started. Okay, so here is the first of the which one doesn't belong activities we're going to take a look at. As you can see, there's 4 pictures, one in each section of the orange square. Now, as you look at it, you can think of a reason why one of them doesn't belong. Take a moment and think about which one you think doesn't belong and why. Okay, so you may have looked at this pink sugar cookie and said this one doesn't belong. And you might have said, well, this one doesn't belong because it's pink and all the other ones are brown. That would be the reasoning that you would write down for this one. But maybe you looked at this one up here and you said this is the one that doesn't belong in the top right. You might say this brownie doesn't belong because it is a square or rectangle shape. The others are all circular. So this one doesn't belong because it is not circular. That would be your reasoning. You might have looked at this one in the top left and said, well, this is the one that doesn't belong because this one is a basketball, and a basketball is not food like all the other ones. That's why that one doesn't belong. You may have looked down at this one and said this one doesn't belong in the bottom right because this one has words on it and it's a cylinder. All the other ones don't have words on them. This one says happy birthday. So that's how this activity works. You can choose any one of the 4 and explain why it doesn't belong by making a rule that all the other ones are following, but that one isn't. Let's do another one as an example. It's another cake one. So take a minute, look at these 4 pictures, and pause the video while you think which one doesn't belong. If you have someone else around at home, you could even ask them, hey, which one do you think doesn't belong? And have a discussion about it. Okay, so let's go through some reasoning. If you thought this one doesn't belong, maybe you thought that because this one in the top left has a slice taken out of it, and none of the other cakes have slices taken out of them. Maybe you thought the one in the top right didn't belong, and maybe that was because this is the only one with chocolate frosting. All the others have white frosting. Maybe you thought bottom left was the one that didn't belong, because bottom left is a rectangular cake or a square cake, and all the other ones were circular cakes, more like cylinders. So that could be why that one doesn't belong. Finally, you could look down here and say, well, this one doesn't, pardon me, that one's next. You might say this one doesn't belong because it has words on it or because it has candles on it. So this one doesn't belong because it's different than the others. Actually, as I've been looking at these, I thought of another reason why this one doesn't belong. Do you see the frosting roses? Here, here, and there's white ones on this cake. But this one has no frosting roses. As you can see, there's lots of different ways you could make a rule about one of these not belonging with the other ones. I'll do one more of these and then I'll show you what your work is going to look like today. This one is a little bit more mathy. It's showing line segments. So take a moment, maybe discuss with someone near you, which one doesn't belong? Okay, let's think about it. So you could say, well, this one doesn't belong because it's yellow in the background and all the others are green. You might have said bottom left doesn't belong because it's the only one that is up and down. It's vertical, while all the others are horizontal. You might have said top right doesn't belong because that line segment has another point in the middle of it. And you might have said top left doesn't belong because it has an arrow at one end. This line actually could keep going if you followed the arrow. So that one doesn't belong. The great thing about this activity is no matter which one you chose, you're right as long as you explain your thinking. Okay, here's your assignment for today. You're going to look at the pictures, decide which one doesn't belong, in your opinion, and type your answer in the space below the picture. Don't forget to explain why the one you chose doesn't belong with the others. So your answers will have to have the word because. It's probably easiest if you use some words like top, bottom, left, and right to help me know which one you're talking about. For example, in the first little picture, there are 4 shapes. You can choose any of them that don't belong. Remember how this activity works. But let's say you think that this one doesn't belong. To tell me which one, you could describe it. The gray square doesn't belong because, and you'd explain why. Or you could describe it using its placement on the circle. So you could say the top right shape doesn't belong because you explain the rest. That word because is really important because that answers the why part. I'll delete that though because you are going to type your own answer. You're going to look at a few of these which one doesn't belong puzzles in your assignment today. There's this one with the shapes. If you scroll down, there's these with 10 frames. Which 10 frame doesn't belong? And explain why in the space below. There's another one with money. I made this one a little bit bigger so you could see the details on the coins and figure out which coins they are. If it's still too small, you can make it even bigger. That's okay. So, look at the details on the coins, think about which one doesn't belong, and write the answer why. And the last one has a picture of some link cubes organized in different ways. You'll tell which one doesn't belong and why. As you type, it might make a new page like that. That's okay. I know to scroll all the way to the bottom to find all of your answers, because I'm going to be looking for answers for all 4 of these. This one, this one, this one, and this one. That means altogether you have 8 things to do. For each of these, you have to tell which one doesn't belong and tell why. That's 2 things for this one, 2 things to do for this one, 2 things for this one, and 2 things to do for this one. Okay. One last tip before I let you get started. You can stretch your brain more and work a little harder if you'd like to. All you have to do is tell which one doesn't belong. But if you're ready to stretch your brain, you could start with maybe this one and tell why the gray square doesn't belong. But then you could skip a line. So the gray square doesn't belong because, and you'd explain why. But then maybe you're like, this shape doesn't belong either if I change the rule to be something else. And you can explain why that one doesn't belong. The bottom right shape doesn't belong because and you could even keep going. But do you see how I'm skipping a line in between each answer? That makes it easier for me to read it later when I'm correcting your work. So, all you have to do is talk about one of them and why that one doesn't belong. But if you want to stretch your brain and do a little extra, you could explain why more of them don't belong. Remember, at the beginning of my video, I showed you how, for these puzzles, you can explain a reason why each of them don't belong. There are no wrong answers here. So feel free to challenge yourself if you're ready for a challenge. All right, that's all for now. I'll see you in the next video.